and just kick it over to you. So take it away, Vikram.
I hope everyone had a great lunch, well charged. Thank you to the organizers, including Chris, for facilitating a very important virtual conference, especially amid the pandemic. I think this is a great way to share experiences, to share knowledge, and I think it's a great way to come together and learn from the lessons, especially from the pandemic. My name is Vikram Pakpadan. I'm an assistant professor and admissions coordinator of the occupational therapy program at SUNY Downstate Health Sciences University. I will be presenting on the topic of e-professionalism within distance education and one of the vital lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic from a higher education perspective. This information will be from the research, the literature, but as well as from personal experiences transitioning a traditional classroom into an online classroom from a allied health perspective. The presentation objectives are to highlight some of the instructional and pedagogy nuances when instructing remotely, especially in the area of student behavior, student participation, and student communication within the umbrella term of e-professionalism. We will look at the various definitions of e-professionalism, there are many, and as well as the current literature and the impact of instructional and social media policies on e-professionalism standards, as well as discussions on strategies on how to address improved sense of professionalism within that digital classroom. So before moving on, when I say professionalism, it can be interpreted in many ways, many discipline-specific ways, many program-specific ways, and so forth. So in terms of professionalism, the most common correlation is to one's code of ethics or a profession's or a discipline's code of ethics. So, it has to be taken from that perspective, that it's not a cookie cutter perspective, but it's really much more central to a mission and philosophy and values of a specific profession. Colleagues, this presentation will attempt to outline strategies on enhancing instructional outcomes, ways to protect the academic integrity of your coursework, enhancing students' self-worth, self-confidence, and professional development within the online classroom, and lastly, to address the development of a student's social emotional intelligence skills or social IQ. That's a very trendy topic in the last 5 to 7 years, and there are many ways to kind of address it through the online context of the online platform. Of conceptualizing what is e-professionalism. It's a fairly new topic, much more common within K through 12, but again, fairly new within higher education, especially within the graduate and undergraduate realms. As an academic instructor myself, it's very difficult to conceptualize the perfect form of professionalism displayed by students within a learning environment. Is it showing up to class on time? Is it being dressed appropriately? Is it the correct and respectful use of pronouns and mutual display of respect to peers and instructors? Or, is it really consistent class participation and engagement? Is it asking questions and engaging in respectful discourse with fellow peers or your colleagues? Or can it be something much more tangible? Can it be more objective? Can it be better correlated to ethics and morals? Better correlated to learning outcomes of a specific course? Um, the 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 traditional manifestation of a student displaying appropriate degrees of professionalism within the classroom has now shifted to looks like you know much what looks like a much different playing field in the online context. So what I'm trying to say is that the online presentation of a student engaging in a class, asking questions, being attentive, is much different in the online context versus the traditional on-campus context. So the expectations have to be clearly laid out or much more transparent for students who are not accustomed to learning online. And I say this with emotion because it's just not an expectation to kind of put students in that particular situation. So when we think about it, students don't necessarily, students aren't always aware of what the expectations are when learning remotely, especially when that's not what they signed up for. So again, some of these examples that I give to you today are going to be examples from the spring semester within my institution, SUNY Downstate Health Sciences University, and some of the what ifs, in regards to the hindsight that we could have utilized. now moving forward into the next spring semester. So e-professionalism is defined as the attitudes and behaviors that reflect traditional professionalism paradigms, but are manifested through digital media. And I believe that's the most relatable definition in regards to a higher education perspective. Described as the most objective and tangible form of behavior that can be correlated to professionalism or professional characteristics. E-professionalism takes that concept and sets out specific behavioral guidelines that depict a set of expectations and structure to a student's behavior within the online classroom. The following graphic displays a summary of the research and studies examining e-professionalism within an array of academic disciplines with both undergrad and graduate level students. Again, these are coming from multiple levels of study, from liberal sciences, liberal arts to healthcare professions, specifically medicine, social work, nursing, and rehab medicine. Methods such as peer-to-peer modeling or near-peer mentorship have been proven successful in communicating positive student behaviors consistent with professional guidelines of that program. This can be implemented by setting up a simple buddy system between underclassmen and upperclassmen with a structured set of expectations and outcomes. This method works truly well between cohorts of the same program from my experience. So speaking from my own experience as an instructor within an occupational therapy program, pairing up upperclassmen or an upper cohort to a lower classman or a lower or first year cohort, for example, is the best way to kind of clearly, transparently set out expectations in regards to professional behaviors. So from the graduate level perspective, it's as simple as communication. Some professors prefer to be called by their first name. Certain professors prefer to be called by their appropriate pronouns or credentials. But setting expectations from a peer-to-peer or near-peer model can be a great way to kind of reduce the anxiety and reduce the level of discomfort or maybe fear of approaching a faculty person in regards to expectations. So that's one platform to kind of, condition students to kind of understand the expectations of a program in regards to professionalism, as opposed to just text, within a student manual and so forth. Furthermore, the importance of having verbiage in professional standards of behaviors, practice, and ethics should be included in student manuals and or handbooks. The digital classroom takes that notion to including expectations for online learning. Miguel, from her research in 2015, found that online behavioral expectations for online classrooms within student manuals in detail produce a much more transparent level of communication and anticipations than not having them in the first place in our study of graduate level students within a medical college. So it's again, not having that assumption that online behavior that's considered professional is an expectation. I think it needs to be much more transparent and laid out within certain forms such as program manuals. Students in a variety of forms of professional development building exercises and activities have also been shown to increase student perceptions of self-worth, self-confidence, and a tighter alignment to a sense of professionalism within these areas of practice. This method has been also a key within my own instructional toolkit as I've come to value placing students in platforms they're just not comfortable with. So placing students in professional networking opportunities or facilitating students to engage in conferences or facilitating students' participation within oral speeches and verbal dialogues or debates is a great way to foster a sense of interprofessionalism. Now being in an online context, there are certain rules and guidelines or certain parameters that a facilitator or an instructor can set to even foster a much more productive and positive experience. So again, e-professionalism can sometimes be manifested as a plan or a blueprint for online instruction that really sets out expectations, but with clear boundaries. And that's kind of what this graphic displays by the literature. Now, moving forward into ethics and moral principles, e-professionalism has a close tie to ethics. Setting behavioral guidelines for students during online learning is one facet, but defining, symbolizing, and modeling ethics and moral principles can be another means of facilitating a higher degree of e-professionalism adherence within online learning. The summary of this graphic stems from teaching what you know, especially what you believe in, as opposed to just teaching from the standard. And I say this loosely because, again, it's coming from a variety of sources. Individualizing, personalizing, and inherently having a stake in your pedagogical delivery can be a refreshingly authentic product of teaching that can relate far better to students than the opposite, as opposed to teaching from, for example, a textbook or from a standard. Again, using the textbook and the standard as a supplemental source as opposed to a primary source of delivering your education. Professional experiences such as case study depictions or professional experiences from your own background within your own discipline is a great way to kind of increase adherence and reduce non-adherence to understanding the application of ethics and moral principles within the area of study. Some can say that this is kind of drawing from a very holistic approach to content analysis, looking at multiple different perspectives and angles, but it's also considered an effective strategy in outlining what students are expected to do post-graduation. And it's by setting the parameters and expectations now within academia, as opposed to them trying to figure it out once they get into the field. Student manuals are a great place to start from the program-specific perspective, but campus policies and procedures are far more effective in outlining e-professionalism standards and expectations. This can be seamlessly implemented through fostering town hall discussions on the topic, as well as on distance education expectations through new student orientations as well. Institutional policies that outline the occurrence of cyberbullying, social media policies, and infringements or violations, and any instance of compromising the academic integrity, such as leaking content, for example, sharing midterm questions or leaking final questions, or even leaking PowerPoints without the instructor's permission, are all instances of defamation or infringements of intellectual property, for example. And that, again, is a violation of online behavior in terms of professionalism. So if you think about it, again, do we have a clear understanding of what is expected and what happens when those expectations aren't met? I'm not talking about reprimands or consequences, but rather behavioral expectations and outcomes of not adhering to those behavioral expectations. One can say that everything we do online is because of behavior. It's manifested and induced by a behavior of some type of reward or something else. But the main gist is for students, there has to be a driving factor. So when setting behavioral expectations, you also have to kind of have another category of what happens when those expectations are not met. And again, that could be another umbrella term or umbrella category of e-professionalism. From my experience, social media usage, cyberbullying within higher education, and non-consented sharing of academic content have been profound issues and obstacles in the formulation and embedment of an e-professionalism standard. Cyberbullying is not gone. Cyberbullying does exist within higher education as per the literature. Also, social media usage and the incorrect use of social media, especially when aligning oneself to a institution or higher education institution such as SUNY, are also matters that we have to kind of fully investigate. Social media usage is quite high now. We're living in a very information technology world. And I think digital citizenship, for example, is a concept that we sometimes take loosely from both a faculty as well as a student perspective. What we do online is a reflection to some degree of our professional lives as well, of our professional identities. And I'll come more to that in a few minutes, but just keep that in mind. I think we try to separate both, but we sometimes kind of have a very lack of transparency when it comes to understanding the differences of those two lives. Within higher education and examined from a higher education lens is not a relatively new topic. However, the impact of students' social media presence and its correlation to higher education standards of practice have been recently discovered as a growing problem with drastic consequences. Social media usage can lead to a positive form of professional growth through professional networking and learning from a multimedia-based platform. Social media does have a great way to kind of supplement and generalize and kind of take a different level of absorption when it comes to content analysis. So I think social media is definitely a positive tool. However, negative effects of social media usage can also exemplify a lack of professionalism through acts and behaviors that do not necessarily relate themselves to an area of study or discipline, but ultimately, since students identify themselves as such, we kind of have to think about their behaviors as a means of, as a symbolism of not understanding the professional expectations of their area of study or program of study. For example, a student engaging in illegal substance abuse online through posting images of such on public forums or public social networking sites. A student sharing medically confidential and sensitive information on social media platforms with little to as per the literature within an array of disciplines, an array of studies for both graduate level students and undergraduate level students. And to my fellow SUNY colleagues, well, do we
Vikram, you're cutting in and out. I don't know, something happened.
Because I'm going to switch to my headset. Yeah, I had a feeling with that. Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay. It just happened now. It's been good up until now.
Alrighty, I think I should be back on. Is that better, Chris?
It is. There's a little bit of a hum, though. That's good.
Yeah, I think that's my laptop cooling down.
Perfect.
All right.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Okay. Is my screen still sharing, Chris? I'm sorry.
No, you have to reshare your screen, but
got it. Okay.
Sounds perfect.
Perfect. Okay. Great. So yeah, in terms, I'm sorry about that, guys. I think AirPods need a constant charge, so mine weren't fully charged. In terms of social media usage, I was mentioning that there's been a lot of studies in regards to infringements of professional character, for example, from medical students and from social work students online, but these profiles and their online presence or their digital presence have been closely aligned to institutions, higher education institutions. So from my interest, when my interest really peaked in regards to this was when there was an abundance of private information sharing of patient data, of patient sensitive data between students on public forums, again, viewable to everyone. So for example, there is a lack of HIPAA compliance where you really don't have a sense of confidentiality and protection of patient-sensitive data. Now, these students were on clinical rotations as per the research from medical students to nursing students and so forth, but they're sharing names and they're sharing images and very sensitive data related to someone's medical status online. So social media usage can have both positive and negative effects on professional development. But when you think about code of ethics and moral principles and also standards of practice, I think there is a lack of instructional time in regards to what does the postgraduate student from SUNY look like when it comes to their online presence, and is it a good depiction of their e-professional standards that we hopefully come to develop from SUNY. Chris, this is just kind of break up the speaking. There's a first poll, if you don't mind launching. Oh, Chris, would you mind launching the? Oh, there. Sorry, thank you. There's a little delay. So the first poll is: which video conferencing platform do you prefer to utilize when communicating professionally online with students or with colleagues? Multiple choice. It's interesting. Yeah, I had a feeling that Zoom was definitely going to be the go-to. Have you guys experienced, I'm just gonna, again, this is just more of a discussion. Have you guys experienced from your campuses a push to use Blackboard Collaborate as opposed to Zooms or Teams or other platforms, just because Blackboard Collaborate is already within the SUNY, what do you call it? The kind of SUNY system. Yeah. Okay. So there's definitely a mix from a lot of the participants. Yeah, I didn't realize that. I guess I was speaking from local, from downstate. Um, so for some reason we were not advised, but I guess we were kind of more in. I guess we received more instruction on Blackboard Collaborate Learn, using Panapto and using Blackboard Collaborate Ultra as a means of a video conferencing tool versus Zoom, just because Zoom was a third party and didn't really have Zoom wasn't really a dedicated learning management system, right? It wasn't really an LMS to begin with. So I was just kind of interested to see what campus or what campus specific tool that was more common within other campuses, other institutions. So Zoom definitely won by 86%. Thank you, Chris. That was interesting. Teams, I think, is in a close second as well. So I think Teams is great for file sharing, and I'll come to that for a quick at a later point. But yeah, it's very interesting. I just, for some reason, I didn't really, wasn't a huge fan, and not really a fan of Blackboard Learn to begin with. It's better for faculty, I believe, in regards to short communication modes. But as a 2 hour lecturer or a 4 hour lecturer for certain classes, I just think Zoom is a little bit more seamless. But again, it's much more subjective, right? There's not really much backing to what I'm saying. So, and I'll come to that in a quick second for my slides. So moving forward, get back to slide mode. Okay, so this goes to my next slide in regards to video conferencing tools. And I think what I'm trying to do today is not to get too subjective or in terms of perceptions and individual specific experiences, but rather looking at video conferencing tools and e-professionalism through a very objective lens. So when we look at Blackboard Learn Collaborate Ultra, when we look at Microsoft Teams, Google Meets, Zoom meetings, Cisco WebEx, and GoToMeeting software, are we looking at the different characteristics of the grid or panel view of students? How is it that you view the students in regards to um, the perception? So when I'm saying in terms of viewing students, are you more comfortable viewing students from a grid perspective or from a panel perspective? And are you able to change that? Does that influence or impact the way you teach? If you look at the chat features, sometimes the chat feature can get a little out of hand if you have more than 40, 50 students. And it's a bit difficult to manage if you're the sole instructor. If you look at breakout sessions and polling, and again, these might be specific to Zoom for now, but they're also available on the other platforms, but in different forms. File sharing, content uploads, and live streaming. I know that a lot of my colleagues prefer Teams because they can live edit a document in real time collectively together and get to a better resolution as compared to using Zoom, where you can't really collectively edit a document in real time during a meeting, or for example, during a class. Recording versus closed captioning, meeting protection, sign-in features, passcodes, cloud-based storage versus hardware storage, and so forth. So what I'm trying to say is that there are multiple video conferencing tools, and there are multiple purposes for each tool, but how we view the context of the online classroom and what we expect as structure really comes from instructional specific characteristics. So in terms of e-professionalism, if I don't want my students to chat with each other, I can simply disable that from I believe from advanced Zoom settings, and just kind of disable intercommunication between students. I can also disable students' video features if I wanted to, or enable students' video features if I wanted to. So there is a far better sense of control, in my opinion, in the online classroom versus the traditional in-person classroom, right? Which is a little bit different. I'm not going to go to my student's screen and turn off their computer or turn off their Amazon window during class. It's just a little bit different. But I can kind of sense their level of attention a little bit more in the online platform versus um, the actual in-class platform. And it's a little bit different. So in terms of what I mentioned before, digital citizenship or etiquette, there's a new term called netiquette that's quite common now. Collaborating with students on the use of secondary dynamic learning objectives and outcomes. Are your learning objectives and outcomes as fluid as your classes? Do you sometimes find your learning objectives for specific courses or a set of courses or even lesson plans to be changed during classes, or again, having a plan B or plan C or contingency plan to your learning outcomes. I think being a little bit more dynamic or a little bit more fluid in having learning outcomes on a course by course basis or even a class by class basis is a great way to facilitate professionalism by not having a sense of adherence to a certain level of expectations. So, for example, sometimes learning outcomes can be met, sometimes they can be enhanced with more questions and further discussions. So, just kind of having sometimes a loose system or a very loose way of teaching can be much more facilitating of a discussion versus just didactically teaching for 2 to 3 hours and not knowing if your learning outcomes were met. So within the first bullet point, it really fosters much more of a dialogue between students than just setting out expectations and hoping you met them at the end without having any basis of measuring such outcomes. Setting a professional behavior grade with each course and collaborating with students on its constructs. So, just out of curiosity from the chat feature, if you guys don't mind, do you guys have professional behavior grades or professional grades? Professional, it can be called different things, but in your syllabus or for the ones that are instructors, do you guys have expectations in regards to professionalism and what that looks like within your syllabus if there's a certain percentage equated to it? Lynn said yes. Mark said no. Um, Lisa, participation that includes cameras on. Yeah, so I guess it does. Yeah, and it's great. What I was hoping to see with it does vary, right? So if we think about professional behavior grade, if in the simplest sense, in the most common sense, it's participation, which is class engagement to some degree, attendance, which is always great, showing up to class, and communication or and growth. So if you think about participation, right now, I mean, I'm asking for feedback from a poll. I'm asking for feedback from the chat feature. I'm trying to assess if what I'm saying in terms of my content is getting through or if it's kind of making sense to anyone. So in terms of participation, it's not just enough to show up to class, right? In terms of attendance, there is a level of engagement that's expected, but much more difficult to achieve in the online classroom versus the on campus or in live classroom. I love seeing my students' hands raise whenever they have a question, and it becomes almost a 5 to 7 minute dialogue that is really much more in depth versus trying to kind of foster engagement in the online classroom. From my experiences, and for everyone else maybe as well, it's much more difficult to kind of foster engagement or class participation when students have this digital separation from the instructor. The online classroom, there's a sense of comfort, right? I can turn off my camera, I can mute myself, I can be looking away or looking at a different computer screen right now while you're teaching. And that doesn't always foster attention, right? Or sustained attention. So have you guys felt the same way that, at least for me from spring, I've had a difficult time in kind of finding creative ways to really foster sustained attentive attention for a 2 to 3 hour lecture, especially on very complex topics. But again, setting these expectations in terms of professional behavior grades is a great way to set learning outcomes as well, right? It's about engagement. It's about coming to class, cameras on or cameras off. That's a personal choice, but also communication. So it's important to kind of set boundaries and behavioral expectations very early on. And that's why I mentioned the syllabus. The syllabus is a great place to start. The last thing in terms of facilitating digital etiquette or netiquette is virtual office hours or virtual open spaces are an excellent approach in remaining accessible and transparent. I've been utilizing virtual office hours since early spring, and I've come to realize they're a great supplement in providing that one-to-one connection or one to a few, 1 to 5 or 7 students connection as opposed to one to many, right? I think sometimes students feel disconnected, especially being a part of a very large classroom and not having that intimate level of connection with their instructors. So, offering these virtual open office hours or just virtual office hours to come in and kind of get your instructor's attention, speak to them on specific issues or challenges that you're having, and kind of fostering a better sense of communication. Have you guys, just from the participant list, has that been useful as well for any of you in your own classes? Open office hours or virtual office hours? I think Lynn Fowler kind of said it right to the point. I have more students coming to my virtual office hours than my campus office hours. Lynn, amen. Yeah, absolutely. I've come to realize they feel a lot more comfortable using their smartphones, hopping into an open office hour and asking their specific questions for their midterms and finals, and then leaving, right? As opposed to making the effort to come to the actual on campus. So yeah, you're right. It's quite interesting. Um, so in terms of open office hours, again, from the literature, if they're set with certain parameters and they're set with certain expectations, it works great. The reason why I say certain expectations is that some students feel comfortable being spectators when it comes to virtual office hours, and certain students are much more active. Again, uh, it's okay to be both, right? Certain students learn from other students' dialogue, and certain students are much more active in their questions. But kind of in just having a safe space, just an open space, is a really good way to supplement their online learning. And also teaches them a lot more about communication tools as a means of fostering transparency. Okay, so I'm going to move on. Chris, there's a second poll, uh, the last poll. So everyone, this is the second poll. Are your personal social media pages also reflective of your professional titles at SUNY? And would you feel comfortable with students seeing your content in regards to your social media pages, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, what have you? So are they reflective of your professional titles at SUNY? So are you clearly stating your professional identities at SUNY within your social media pages? So far, it's a far more yes than a no. It's about 62% yes and 38% no. And the second part is, are you comfortable with students seeing your content? We have half the participants that voted. Okay, great. So yeah, that's fine. We'll close right there. So it's 53% saying yes and about 47% saying no, and that's a very interesting thing if you think about it, guys. So it's we sometimes want to. It's kind of like preaching, right? Where you're saying that it's important to have a good understanding of. Sorry, let me share my screen. It's important to have a good understanding of your social identity or your social presence, but in terms of feeling comfortable with students viewing that same information, it's going to be a little bit tricky, and this is the age old debate within online social media usage from a professional context, is that should you have two professional identities? One is your personal social media presence, who you are within social media networks personally, and one is your professional presence. For example, I often find LinkedIn as a great forum or a great platform to get that professional identity out there in terms of social media usage, but I find Instagram and Twitter to be a little bit more personal to me, right? As opposed to kind of aligning myself to SUNY. Does everyone feel the same way or have different ideas in terms of, for example, LinkedIn versus Instagram or LinkedIn versus Twitter? Again, all could be used for professional purposes, but I think it's important to kind of separate both. For example, if you don't want your students to see your content, but your content could be accessible if you haven't set the right parameters in the settings tab, that becomes a problem when you're preaching about professionalism, correct? Because it's not really what you want to display to students. So it's kind of like it's kind of a double-edged sword if you think about it, right? It's yes, you should have your personal identities online, but at the same time, social media can be used for learning and for access of information. So students do search us. I believe students do actively search for information. From an admissions perspective, in my role within SUNY Downstate, I am searched all the time from a simple Google search just to see what I'm up to on social media. And that's a little bit, it can be a little bit uncomfortable from an admissions perspective, especially when you're representing a program or representing the ideology of your campus, right? In terms of admissions, so it's a little bit interesting. But again, it's the reason why I say LinkedIn is just because I believe personally LinkedIn has been proven to be a much more of a professional forum as compared to other leisurely forums, right, for social network engagement. So we're almost done with the slides. I just kind of want to give a little more time to the Q&A, but this is a scenario that I want you guys to consider and kind of dwell upon from your own perspectives and experiences. So during not asynchronous, but during a live course, a live course on Zoom, the course instructor notices the following issues. 29 out of the 34 students have turned off their cameras despite being prompted not to. Students keep on logging in and out of the 2-hour session. Students are live chatting with their peers through the chat feature, but are not engaging with the content in class. When chatting, they're using emojis and social slang. When asked the question from the instructor, students chat in their responses as opposed to unmuting themselves. Students leave class early without notifying the class instructor. Students are absent from class and repetitively fault hardware issues such as laptops and tablets and so forth. So these are all different scenarios that can easily happen, and I'm sure they've happened to all of us when using Zoom or Teams or Blackboard Collaborate or any other video conferencing tool for professional use. The issue here is that, well, are any of these deal breakers? Are any of these going to be gigantic, non-debatable, drastic factors that lead to a ding on a student's degree or representation of professional behaviors? Uh, Anyone? A through G, does any of these really kind of stand out to you as just not acceptable by any means? Now, before you pick one, just think about the other perspective. For example, a student keeps on logging in and out of a 2-hour session. I'm not sure about everyone else, but my Wi-Fi has been okay for most of the day, but sometimes it gets a little spotty, and sometimes logging in and out of the 2-hour session becomes normal, especially if you have a loss of connection, or in my case, my AirPods ran out of juice. So it's these little troubleshooting things that happen within technology that can account for why a student will log in and out multiple times. So it could be a hardware issue, right? Not necessarily something done intentionally. So do any of these from the chat box, do any of these kind of stand out to you as issues, as just drastic issues when it comes to professional behaviors, from at least from your experiences as well? Out of curiosity, for G, students are dressed inappropriately for the class session. Has that happened to anyone? And I use the word inappropriate very carefully because, again, it's a little subjective, but students being dressed inappropriately for class sessions, live, synchronous class sessions. I'm just out of curiosity, again, talking to my fellow colleagues, right, fellow instructors. Has that happened to anyone? Lisa mentioned students are have cameras on, but are not clearly not in attendance. Sure, not engaging in class. Gila, issue A strikes me as a privacy violation if you insist on having their cameras on. Sure. Uh, Lynn, I've had students view class while in bed. Absolutely, myself as well, in bed as well, sometimes in the bathroom, which can be quite interesting. And Chris, I think we should be giving students the benefit of the doubt for all of these things. But again, there are certain times where you need to address some of them, if not all these issues. Yeah, absolutely. And again, thank you, Chris, for mentioning that. I think there's multiple angles or perspectives when looking at these issues, right? A through G. They're not all accountable to intentional violations of professional tenets or ethical values and behaviors. I just think that these could have multiple reasons, multiple occurrences, multiple factors that we're not always looking into. Um, for G, Fatoma, sorry if I said your name incorrectly. G hasn't happened to me, but I've asked male students, to turn off their cameras if they're in bed because it's awkward. Sure, yeah, I think so far, yeah, I've also had many students, both male and female, laying down in bed, uh, clearly a bedroom, while engaging in a 2 or 3 hour lecture or 2 or 3 hour class. I'm sure it's comfortable. I'm sure they can't do that in the classroom itself, in a traditional classroom, but it's just, yeah, it's a little different. Definitely awkward as well, I would say. So it's just things to consider in regards to, well, do we clearly know what we're expecting from students?
So we
Uh,
are at time.
oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, okay. But I'll give you a minute or two. We have a little break here, so
Sure, sure.
we could just a minute or two to wrap
Yeah,
up.
yeah, not a
Sure.
problem. I'll get to my last slide, which is again, it, everything e-professionalism is from the current literature is basically setting out certain expectations very early on moving forward. There's a lot of research on medical students not adhering to e-professional standards. This can be applied to a plethora of disciplines. So from my perspective, it's important to really clearly lay out the expectations for students in the online classroom as early as possible. And that's all, Chris. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vikram. Yeah, so if you want to hang out and, maybe address any questions in the chat if anybody has any. But if not, or we're kind of on a break now. Again, we would be having coffee and cookies or other snacks right now for actually the conference. So feel free to take a refreshment break right now, everyone. We have one more presentation today, and I'll go ahead and let those folks in. But first, give Vikram our applause. I know everyone's got the. I actually don't have that. Do I have? Oh yeah, I have it. Yeah, okay, there you go.
Awesome. I wish we had like a little stadium applause, like a full that'd be great. That's okay. Yeah,
That's great.
But thank you everyone again. Thank you for your time and attendance. Thank you, Chris, to the team for setting up a great platform to kind of share our experiences, especially after the pandemic. It's been a trip, to say the least. Yeah, but thank you.
Well, it's a little easier for us to all connect this way. I mean, going from where you are to Cortland would have been a little bit of a hike. So
it would have been many gas stops and a lot of coffee stops. Yeah, for me from Brooklyn, New York. Absolutely.
All right. Well, if you want to stick around and answer any questions in the chat, if anybody has any.
Yep.
But okay, so we're gonna get started in just a few minutes. All right.